Hello and welcome to Both. Both is Good, a podcast where DMs, GMs, lore keepers, and anyone who runs tabletop games talk to each other about how they run their games. I'm Adam, and I've been running my game mostly by the book.
And I'm Siera, and I hate math.
This is a nice opportunity for us to pick each other's brains about the various ways we run our D&D 5e games and to just hang out.
Mm-hmm.
So, common disclaimers, we're just two people who play D&D a lot, and we have our opinions on how we like to run our games. That doesn't mean you have to run D&D the same way we do. We just like to spark discussion, Maybe hear what we're talking about. Maybe it'll be inspiring.
That's it. Get your brain juice flowing.
Yeah. Really
massage
get those
the noggin.
Neurons firing, But yeah.
Well,
this week in D&D, how's it been going, Mystic?
Oh man, it's been a really busy week for the studio and for me personally, and for the studio and professionally. It's just been like a big week in general. But before, it's actually been, we played the Saturday game.
Mm-hmm.
And that was fun. The podcast game didn't play because we had two people missing. So no updates there. But yeah, lots of interesting drops in the Saturday game. It was a travel day. Mm-hmm. We've talked about it. It was fun. We got closer to our destination. We're in the suburbs of the city we're trying to get to, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It kind of continues a trend in the Saturday game where there's big lore drops that I have no idea what they mean.
I know.
From my character perspective. So I think it means more to some other players in the game. I'm still like, I wonder how this will come up. All right. Ghost Rock.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Ghost Rock.
But it's been fun. That game was fun.
It was fun. The rock was like impactful to my character in a way that I didn't even realize was going to be used in the game, kind of a way.
Dang.
Yeah.
I really want to know.
I know.
But I understand your character's perspective.
We'll talk about it someday.
Yeah, at some point.
And then there was another backstory, a little like dollar on the string kind of a thing that popped up at the end of the session that I received a message from Daniel, from the game master, during session that I didn't see until after because I was just like in it. I wasn't looking for like triggers or like normally we keep Discord up in the groups that I play in just for like, hey, I am uncomfortable. I'm not really like watching it a lot. Unless I'm DMing. But yeah, I got a message after that interaction in game, which I thought I was like totally appropriate. That made me then realize something I didn't realize in the moment. And I was like, oh no, maybe I would have. I don't think Margot would have acted differently, but it made me think about it.
Oh.
Yeah. Then this week, Magic Systems episode came out. And we played the Wednesday game. Both of those things happened on Wednesday. Yeah. And we didn't play the Wednesday game either. What am I saying? We had a Rocky Horror watch party on Amazon instead of playing because we were missing a player, and they're getting close to end game, so it's really weird if there's someone missing. Yeah. So the first game I played really was the Dread stream last night.
Yeah.
First to die, baby.
First to die. My gosh. Yeah, it was so unlucky. I had them.
I
had
dice.
you all roll those D10s at the start to set the initial difficulty of the tower falling, and it was a 10, a 5, a 5, a 5, and a 9, which, you know, sets that starting difficulty at
30 something.
34.
Yeah.
You know, like that's a high chance on a D100 to just like go down.
Hey, I poked the bear. I had so much fun. It was so fun. And I also loved that there was like an extra life essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And what's funny is I was trying to be so serious because that was just like my character. But as soon as I got Steph alone, I couldn't help but like smile with victory.
Yeah. It's so well done. And,
no one suspected a thing.
No one suspected. And that was I loved how that turned out. Thank you all so much for playing in that.
No, thank you for leading it. So good. Yeah, then my band played a show, so nice. I have leftover eyelash glue on, and kind of sleepy, and I have tea for my voice.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. How about you? How were your weeks in D&D?
I think kind of the same level of uneventful last couple of weeks, because I had been out with COVID, and then 2 weeks when I was ready to come back, a different player in my group got COVID. So we were out that week, and then we just canceled tonight as well because someone's out with COVID, and it's also one of our players' like son's birthday coming up soon, so can't make it. So we've been on a lengthy hiatus, which is a little unfortunate because they're at like a big event's about to happen kind of moment. But that's been fine. On Sunday, we are still kind of in our Circus one shot. And that was fun. We reached the conclusion of our story and solved a couple puzzles. It was a good time. It's a lot of fun. And then running the Dread game was a blast. I was so nervous about it, like going up to it. And then as soon as I was like, you know what, I could have the stream up to look at the dice rolls and just never look at chat. Like that, it all just went away and we were just playing Dread and having a good time. It now feels weird because like I've been thinking about that Dread game for so long that now that it's done and I don't have to think about it anymore. There's this void in my mind that I have to fill with something else.
Tuesday game.
Exactly where it's starting to go. So.
Oh, yay. I'm so excited. I know we don't know when we're going to start or whatever, but yeah, I'm pretty stoked about it.
I feel like we're close. It's one of those things where I just need I need the final piece from Liz, and then I think we're good. Like have kind of that talk like I had with you on your character this week with the other three, and then we could have session 0/session 1. And then we'll be right into it. And hopefully you all enjoy the kind of story I have brewing up for that.
This is my first sorcerer ever in a campaign.
Yeah.
Other than like one-shots and things. And my first ever paladin in a long-term campaign.
Yeah.
Multi-classing. I'm excited for it. The build is so fun.
Yeah. It seems super cool. I'm excited for all of that. But yeah, I think that's the end of my week or weeks of D&D.
Yeah.
So let's hop into today's topic, which is a big one. I don't think we'll be able to cover all of this in one, but maybe we could hit key points. Maybe we'll be able to finish it. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But today we're talking about metagaming in Dungeons and Dragons. So it's one of those really big, like, pop words, right? You hear people talk about metagaming, and it's just like, yeah, we all know what that means. But what does it actually mean? You know? So, I mean, we have a couple places in the book that we could look to. In the DMG, there's one page in Chapter 8 called Running the Game. And let me know if there are more pages in the DMG that you all know about where it talks about this more. But this is what we found leading up.
Should we define metagaming first? Like,
sure.
I just looked up the definition.
All right.
And according to this source, Wiktionary, there we go. It came out. It got there. My brain got there. Okay. Metagaming is the playing of metagames, or the act of making use of knowledge while role-playing that a player has learned out of character, which their character does not know, often considered a form of cheating.
Mm-hmm.
Which we'll get into, but to me doesn't even cover like half of it. or it gets too specific so that it doesn't cover all of what I consider to be metagaming.
Mm-hmm. Another definition from it, from Wikipedia's article on metagaming in general, and why we're pulling from this wiki article and from Wikipedia itself is just tried looking up a Webster's dictionary definition for metagaming. It doesn't come up, doesn't exist. Really interesting. So in role-playing games specifically, metagaming is a term, I think it's the same description that you gave, just worded a little bit differently. Often used to describe players' use of assumed characteristics of the game. In particular, metagaming often refers to having an in-game character act on knowledge that the player has access to, but the character should not. For example, tricking Medusa to stare at a mirror when the character has never heard of Medusa and would not be aware of the petrifying stare. And for instance, a player might adjust his character's actions if the player has some foreknowledge of the long-term intentions of the game master, or more commonly, the game master's tendency to have or lack mercy on players whose characters might do things that would otherwise cause them to fail at their objectives. A player changing how they play the game based on their knowledge of the game master would be metagaming.
That more clearly defines it the way that I know it, I think.
Yeah. Which is a lot in terms of that. And then in the DMG, there's one section called Metagame Thinking. And it states metagame thinking means thinking about the game as a game. It's like when a character in a movie knows its movie and acts accordingly. For example, a player might say, the DM wouldn't throw such a powerful monster at us. Or you might hear, the read aloud text spent a lot of time describing that door. Let's search it again. Discourage metagame thinking by giving players a gentle reminder. What would your characters think? You could curb metagame thinking by setting up situations that will be difficult for the characters and that might require negotiation or retreat to survive.
Yeah. Which is also funny because as a DM, as a person or a lore keeper, as the person leading and holding space at the table, this is really a player policing or like a setting of a standard and then the player needing to match themselves. And we discovered before we hopped on here, there's no mention of metagaming that I could find in my quick search in the player's handbook. Which I think is interesting because it certainly is a more player-oriented and lore-keeper guarded piece of playing at the table, whereas I feel like a lot of the game is kind of the other way around.
Yeah. It's a very curious topic to tackle, to be sure. I'm actually like kind of surprised reading that in the DMG still, but I think we'll get to that when we start talking about it more.
Yeah. Well, I think that's like, I think too, if we want to dive into it, metagaming in my first games wasn't something that was ever talked about because we were all new.
Yeah.
Like the DM was new and all the players were new. And so we didn't like it happened at the table. It evolved to that. And I realized early on that I didn't like playing with this one particular person. Later on realizing it's because literally everything they said was like them as a person instead of their character, right? But it wasn't until, a few games in and understanding and playing at different tables and seeing how different people can metagame or choose to metagame or do it without thinking of it, you know, like there's lots of ways that it happens that I really started to understand what it was and how to tackle it as a lore keeper or someone leading a table.
Yeah.
I'm not sure us reading definitions and things, if you don't know or haven't experienced metagaming, will help you understand. You know, like it's a complicated topic is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
You have to play at a table and experience it to really know.
Yeah. It's so weird. Like, so what do you consider when you think about metagaming? What parts of the game first come to your mind?
Combat's the first thing that comes to mind for me.
All right.
And I don't think that a lot, like, I don't know if everyone would consider this metagaming, but an example of metagaming to me is like, how's everyone looking?
Yes. I 100%
like,
agree. Sorry.
That or for me, metagaming is not when another player is like, hey, I think you might have a smite slot, or you're blessed, or, you know, I cast guidance, so roll it. Like any of those mechanic helps. That to me isn't so much metagaming because it's a cooperative game. And sometimes that kind of table talk needs to happen.
Yeah, and it's easy to forget that you have something affecting you.
Yeah.
Even if you have it written down, because you're thinking about a lot when you're playing your character.
Mm-hmm.
Easy to miss what other players give you as well.
Mm-hmm. Outside of a combat scenario, it's exactly as you read from the Wikipedia article. It's utilizing knowledge that you as a player have, but your character wouldn't have ever experienced.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What about you?
I think that's... So I think that second part about... sorry, I'm going to be everywhere in this conversation.
That's okay. Yeah, it's complicated one.
If it comes back to me thinking about where I think of metagaming, when I think of metagaming, I do think about combat specifically with HP totals. Like that's one thing that definitely comes to mind, because I think everyone describes combat a little bit differently, and there are ways in describing it that make it more obvious and ways that are less obvious. So like, for example, one of the ways that my Sunday game DM conceptualize it that I really like is that your health points or your HP pool isn't like a pool of blood that you constantly take wounds and bleed from when you are in combat and take damage, but it's more like your stamina to survive and to dodge in a fight. So when you get hit and you take damage, your character's not physically getting wounded every time they get hit, but they're like losing their stance, or they're breaking down like their defenses. So it's like mechanically you're losing HP, but like descriptively you're not taking a serious hit that like wounds you. Like that would only be in Sunday games specifically, that's only relied to like when you drop to 0 or you're within your first starting health pool. That's when you start to like bleed, get hurt, and then it's visible to everyone. Whereas I think in my game, the way I play it is you're not wounded unless you take massive damage, which is an optional rule, where if you take an HP hit that's equal to half of your health points in a single hit, then that hit could have extra ramifications, because that is a deadly blow to you. That's something that shouldn't always happen. But the absolute first thing I think about when I think about metagaming is before the game even starts, when people are selecting their classes. And the party's talking together about making the optimal team composition instead of just playing what they're wanting to play in the game. So like having that conversation of like, hey, we have in our game, like we have someone playing a wizard, we have someone playing a bard, we could really use a frontliner. So if you like, we want you to build like a paladin or a barbarian. Like I think even that early on is a form of metagaming in D&D, which I don't think is a bad thing. Like I don't disagree. Like I don't think metagaming's always bad. in playing the game. I think there are instances where it is, but there are instances where it like adds to the game in like a meaningful way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sorry, that's my exhale on that question. So I am so guilty of metagaming. That is.
Oh, same.
100%.
Absolutely. It's really hard, especially the HP thing. Like, combat is so slow and kind of hard to pay attention to. And also, you're trying to plan what your character's going to do next because, you know, we want to keep the game moving because combat is so slow. That, like, if I have played a cleric, like, I've played a main healing class before, and I'm not necessarily paying attention to hearing the DM describe that this character has a huge bloody wound on their arm now. Or like the player saying, you know, oh, like I stagger back and try not to vomit in the pain that I, you know, like if there is good description happening, I'm maybe not even listening to that because I'm staring at my character sheet trying to think about what I'm going to do next. Yeah. So I think that's where DMs can help. And we haven't talked about combat at all in this yet because it is a big topic with lots of pieces. But I think one of the things that could help is for maybe once every initiative order, ask your players to describe how their character looks. Like, what do the other players see as your character's moving? Or maybe every few. And then it would, if you're prompting that and adding it as a role play factor into this heavy mechanics session, then there's less of a chance for your character to go, oh, how's Sally doing? And then Sally being like, oh, I'm at 10%, or just saying blatantly saying like 5 of 30, you know, like would discourage some of that.
Yeah, I think that's a cool way to do it. I like that idea in that it gives the power to the player to describe how their character is looking, and it gives them the opportunity to maybe even lean to the direction of, oh, the hits they took didn't look bad because it was all psychic damage. So it's like, oh yeah, my character looks completely fine, like nothing's happened to him. And then the other player who's metagaming gets really mad. So they're like, of course, you just took all your health and damage and psychic damage. Why aren't you telling me you're hurt? I'm like, sorry. That's on you.
Yep.
But also it gives them an opportunity to try to describe in character what would make sense.
Yeah. And of course, we're talking about more time in combat that isn't already there. So I would say find the rhythm. Like if you do want to try implementing this, find the rhythm that works for you. I don't do this. It's just something that I've thought about. But I also have amazing seasoned players and like a production level table. And I feel like you all do a very good job of describing how things are looking or how you all are feeling.
Even if I don't know what I'm doing in a turn, when it's my turn, I start saying what I'm doing and I commit.
Yep.
Like I try to keep combat rolling as quick as possible. And sometimes it makes it feel like I'm doing so little in the turn order. Because it's like, oh, it's my turn. Okay, I attack, end of my turn.
Yeah.
Go on. I did my bonus action, move action, done.
Yeah.
But like, I know that I'm more seasoned in the game. And I have that planned out for all of my characters. Like I know my general strategies for combat. I know what I'm doing every turn unless something like really weird happened during the turn. And that's the only time. Like if I'm playing a caster where I'll stop. There's like extenuating circumstances.
Yeah.
But moving on to this, I think there's one other aspect of metagaming that I really latch on to because it's something that I try not to do as a player, and I'm try to rationalize as a character what I do and don't know. And that's when we enter combat in knowing what the creature is that we're fighting. And it's something that's getting harder for me being a DM and looking at the stat blocks because I know what a lot of creatures are now and I know their strengths and weaknesses. But I'd have to try to not have that in my character when we start a combat. So
Yeah.
I'm curious what you think about that, Mystic. Like, where do you come from that angle?
Yeah, I have had a few moments at tables where I'm like, oh, we're fighting a troll. Let's use poison damage. Or, like those kinds of moments. And this is another form of metagaming that comes on top of this, is like, me knowing this, I could then manipulate to like me as a player ask for a roll to gather the information that I know.
Yeah.
Which I despise when people at my table are like, can I roll intelligence to see yada? I'm like, tell me what you want to do. And if I want you to roll, then you can roll, because this might be an impossible roll and I don't want that to happen to you. Yeah. So
I find myself asking at each of the tables I play at so much the question, has my character encountered this creature before?
Yeah.
And like, it's to a point where I'm like, should I like keep asking this question? Like, what is...
Yeah.
I think
and I think ways as, table facilitators that we can help with that. I think a perfect example is one of the Utopia episodes that came out recently, where Morgus encountered a manticore in the library by himself and described it and drew it really poorly. And I just straight up told you, Adam, that Godfrey would know what this is and has experienced it before. Yeah. And like that is a very simple way. Like, even if in campaign the characters haven't experienced what they're going through, think about how long their lives were before they got to this point. Like, Ziba never seen a fucking manticore before in her life. But Godfrey, especially where he has come from and what I know about him from our conversations and our character creation, 100%, Yeah. And then also maybe even having that collaborative conversation at the table in the same scenario like I did with Morgus. Morgus is an enigma, and Daniel and I work together, sometimes in parallel but opposite tracks, to put together the things that Morgus doesn't remember.
Yeah.
And so I just, Daniel's like, is this something that Morgus has noticed before? And I just said, you tell me. You read a lot. Would you have researched beasts? Having conversations over prompting mechanics, I think, is kind of a big nugget of what a solution is to stop metagaming from just like this past little conversation we've had.
I will say the thing I love the most about that is that Morgus drew the manticore so poorly that Godfrey still doesn't know what he encountered.
I know. Yep.
But the way that I'm starting to build into my game, it's something that I keep forgetting to do sometimes as a DM. At the start of combat, I have someone who is proficient in an intelligence skill that's appropriate to the creature gets to make a free intelligence check to see if their character knows about the creature. And I really like this for a couple of reasons, because the first, I'm a mechanics head. Like, I love the book and I love mechanics. So I love building in ways to subvert this meta knowledge mechanically. The second reason I love it is it makes intelligence skills applicable, because a lot of times those skills just go unused. And there's a lot of conversation in certain parts of the internet of intelligence being one of the least useful stats in 5th edition. So like I break down on a list on a card between Arcana, History, Nature, and Religion. You're able to make a check and be able to check based on the creature type that you're fighting. And you can see if your character, because they have knowledge in that area, have knowledge about the creature that they're in combat with, like for free when combat starts. Yeah. Because like if you're walking down the street as a normal person and you see a cat, like things about a cat without having to, really take a 6-second think about it, right?
Yeah.
So
I'm curious your thoughts around that kind of system. Jeez Louise, what are words today?
again, it's been a long week, like you said.
That kind of system, and then the spell and the fighter thing, I forget what they're called, that they can do, those two things that actually can be used to gain information about your opponent. And if you find that if you had someone in the party that had those abilities, you would still do the rolls at the top.
So
because your rolls aren't using resources, but their action, like that fighter action and the spell, would cost them like limited use items, you know?
I'm not sure what spell you're referring to, but I do know the fighter feature. I'm gonna pull it up really quick here.
Yeah.
Just so I can look at it, because the thing with that fighter feature is it requires you to take a full minute talking with someone to size them up, right? Because that's through Battlemaster. This was the first class I ever played in D&D 5e. Was Battlemaster.
Nice.
I love Battlemaster because in part because of that, and in part because it's an amazing class and subclass. Don't at me. Where'd it go? What's here? Oh, know your enemy. So this one is starting at 7th level. If you spend at least 1 minute observing or interacting with another creature outside combat, you can learn certain information about its capabilities compared to your own. And it lets you know strength score, dex score, con score, armor class, current hit points, total class level, and fighter class levels. So in my mind, because this is based on a battle master who is kind of like a master of maneuvers, and in a way, you know, it doesn't have to be thematically someone who is a combatant. It's like a duelist who fights other people for sport or for money. This is a way for them to size up their competition before a competition and to gain access to knowledge in that way. It's like, it would kind of step on the toes of these things in a way. But then again, like if you do this against a creature, I would maybe make it so these base skill checks won't tell you like current hit points or armor class, but it might tell you, hey, these things have these resistances and these weaknesses. Or these things have this kind of combat ability, like a petrifying stare in Medusa's case, that you need to be really aware of, that this know your enemy skill doesn't give you at all, right?
Yeah. I don't know what I'm talking about. I haven't found it. I think maybe it's not even a spell. I think maybe it's like a
Ranger
level.
Monster Slayer?
Is that what it is? I was just looking at the Ranger page.
So they get something here. I think it's Hunter's Sense. At 3rd level, you gain the ability to peer at a creature and magically discern how best to hurt it.
Yes,
as an action, choose one creature you can see within 60 feet of you. You immediately learn whether the creature has immunities, resistances, vulnerabilities, and what they are. If it's hidden from divination magic. But if it's hidden from divination magic, you sense that it has no immunities, resistances, or vulnerabilities.
Mm-hmm.
So this one, it's an action where the other thing is free.
Okay.
I'll give you that. But the way I've built this for a free is that it has a DC that you have to meet. And the DC is 8 plus half the creature's CR.
Okay.
And then if you meet that, you learn one thing about it, and only one thing. If you beat that score by 5 or more, you learn 2 things about it. And if you beat that score by 10 or more, you learn 3 things about the creature. Where this Hunter's ability would give you all of those things right away. No skill check required.
Mm-hmm. Crazy.
Yeah. And again, if we did have a Monster Slayer in the party, and I am offering these rule sets up, I would have an above conversation table with specifically that player to make sure they don't feel like their toes are being stepped on with this system being put in place.
Yeah.
And I would modify that if they did.
Yeah. I like it. I like the idea of eliminating metagaming by just handing little inklings of knowledge at the top of a combat. That's cool.
Yeah, not even handing, but like it's because they built their character that way, right? So it's a reward for choosing those skills. Because one of the big ones here would be nature, because nature teaches you about like half of the monster groups. And right now, nature is a dump skill for everyone. Like there's almost no reason to take nature.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. I went on that because I'm really excited about this homebrew.
I mean, it's great. It's a good idea. And if it's working at your table, that's really awesome. I want to touch on some more non-combat metagaming around this idea of like anyone who's experienced any level of folklore in real life can sometimes equate that knowledge to in-game. Like why would your character know that you need a silvered weapon for certain things or a magic weapon for certain things if you know that, werewolves being like the thing that I was thinking of, you know?
Yeah.
Or lichen in general. And sometimes that doesn't necessarily come up in the combat, especially if it's not a random encounter. It's something that the party's been working towards. Maybe there's information to gather around what you're going to be fighting. And then there can be some metagaming in like the conversations. What would you say, in your opinion, would be like some examples of non-combat metagaming?
One of them that came up in the Sunday game is it's a world that's set where portals opened to all the planes, and there's all kinds of non-human creatures coming into the material plane, which used to be humanal, right?
Yeah.
So we're in a big city, and at one point on the level of the city we've been hanging out in, a new shop opens up where there are 3 kindly healers who work together as a group to help people out with things. Which metagame knowledge was very, very easily recognizable as a hack coven. And it was really fun to pretend like it wasn't a hack coven for as long as we could. But that's the first instance that comes to mind. But another kind of pushback against this idea of it being metagaming, you know, depending on the world state, right? So if werewolves are a brand new thing that has never existed in the world before, and your group is just now interacting with it, it wouldn't make sense for them to know about the silver weakness. But if werewolves and lycanthropy exist in the world before the start of the game, then people have definitely been telling stories about it and spreading rumors about it that would be reasonable for people to know about, right?
For sure.
And in that way, that kind of metagaming, I personally don't have too much of an issue with.
Yeah, that to me goes back to like the Manticore situation of like, I think it could be used where someone would be like, oh, I know about that. And then just like talk like they know without any reflection. Like there certainly needs to be a pause from a player perspective of like, what would my character actually know?
Yeah.
If you're playing a cloistered scholar or something and werewolves are new, you don't know. You know, like, there's tons of examples we could talk about that fit outside of the rule. And so just preemptive, like beating your players to the punch, essentially, and just asking, you know, what do you know?
Yeah.
Or maybe you have a mechanic and you just make them roll for it. But yeah.
Yeah. Maybe as a tip, if you're a new player to the game, just always double check. Or like if you know your backstory knows something, maybe reference that you might know that and ask the DM, like if your character has the knowledge that you think they have. And bringing it out. Because like this is a big game and a lot of people know a lot of things. And it's reasonable that, you know, sometimes your character might just know things.
Mm-hmm.
But as long as it doesn't take away from the game or the mystery. So I think the last kind of big point on this meta game, not tangent. It's literally the opposite of the tangent. It's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
The last part of metagaming that really comes up here, and I know I'm bringing this up near the end of the episode, was that idea of metagaming based on your DM's typical storytelling style, which is it's a way of thinking about metagaming that I haven't thought about, but that I've definitely participated in. Especially with the Sunday Game DM, who I've been playing with for a very long time. He has a way of telling the story, and it was a really funny moment that came out accidentally during one of our games, because he was describing us meeting this new, like, insanely beautiful person. And as soon as he was done describing it, two of us players like looked at each other and went, "Yep, that's the evil person. Like, we know that person's evil and they're going to con us." And
because
the DM's like,
yeah.
The DM's like, "What? Why do you know that?" It's like, it's a beautiful person. Every beautiful person you describe to us is evil and trying to hurt us. And he's like,
the beautiful people. The beautiful people.
Oh, yeah. He had a moment of like self-realization that this was just a trope that he was building like unintentionally into his story.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah, I feel like that's a harder one to tackle as DMs and players, because it takes a lot of self-reflection.
I've never thought of that at all. Do I have a tell, Adam?
I haven't played in your game long enough to know.
I know. I feel like I don't know any tells for any of the DMs that I've played with because I've had so many. You know, like, I just don't, there's not a consistency.
Yeah. I think in like the DMG was, I've been going back to this like passage because, you know, full transparency, we decided before we started recording that we weren't going to read it beforehand. Mm-hmm. So we could introduce it and then react off of it for the game. And it keeps throwing me off, like some of the wording in it. And it's specifically like the last sentence. So you could curb metagame thinking by setting up situations that will be difficult for the characters that might require negotiation or retreat to survive. There's something about that just really, I don't know if I understand what they're trying to say there. You have any ideas to that?
Maybe like if you create a combat scenario so deadly that everyone's just freaking out and thinking about getting their character out alive or their party out alive versus trying to figure out what the monster is. Like, just genuinely not even caring, just trying to make sure that they, like...
So it's like...
That's the only thing I could think of.
Like, it's a DM tool from the perspective of a DM that's in a party that's just everyone's metagaming. Mm-hmm. And you want them to stop.
Yeah.
But you can't have that above-table conversation to ask them to stop. So instead, you...
Just try to steamroll them.
Wreck them.
Yeah, it's not a strategy I would ever use.
Yeah. That goes against a lot of what we've talked about in previous episodes from our experience of DMing, what you should do. Yeah, maybe that's just a perspective. Is I'm taking the perspective of my own table, which I'm really blessed for because I don't have a lot of people who's metagaming. The most metagame that's happened at my table is we had one player who was taking such good notes that they noted exactly how much HP and damage a monster has took, and then looked up that monster's health block and was like, this creature should be dead by now. At one point during a game.
That's
and as soon as that happened,
cool.
Another player at the table was like, you can't do that. That's metagaming. And like, it wasn't even coming from me. So
yeah.
I was like, that's fine. Like, when that happened, I just started rolling the health of all of my creatures from then on out, which is something I did do at the very start, but became very tedious. So I started using average. But like, there's a lot of ways in that way as a DM too. If someone is metagaming, you could adjust the game to make it more difficult for them because they're going off of knowledge that's not the true knowledge of what you have behind the screen.
Yeah. I would say the last thing that I want to say about metagaming is like, I am someone who always wants to start by setting everything up for success. I literally went on Reddit like a few years ago, found a session 1 like questionnaire or like guide that someone else had made and did not skip any of the questions, filled them all out. There were like 100, no joke.
Wow.
Sent it to my players before the game, and then we spent a lot of session 0, which I think a lot of people don't do, talking about expectations for the party, expectations for the table, defining what everything means for us as a group. And then that way, if something goes on later on, you've already raised the platform, right? You've already opened that door. You've already had that conversation in a very kind, amicable way. Now you can say, hey, I know we talked about this. You were on board with this. We need to make sure we're sticking to it, kind of a thing, rather than never addressing it or discussing what it means for your table and then having to like kibosh someone or like feel weird about having a potentially sticky conversation with someone, Yeah. The door's already been opened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess in response to metagaming, just have a session 0.
Have a session 0.
Just make sure everyone knows exactly what you expect as far as metagaming goes.
Yeah. Should we bless and bane? I have a few notes.
Sure. Let's do some blesses and banes to... Are we blessing and baning metagaming?
Yeah.
Like the pros to metagaming and the cons to metagaming?
Yeah.
Let's do it. Metagaming. I'm writing this down because that's how my brain works.
I took notes this time. I wrote things down.
Nice. All right.
I also have the notes from last night.
Nice.
You like how it says...
Just the big bold text.
I barely filled a single index card.
Yeah.
That's how long I lasted. A bane for both of us, I feel like, is that last sentence of the DMG. I'm not going to steamroll my players. I'm going to have a conversation with them, but certainly tactic.
Yeah. I think... Yeah, I would agree. That's probably the last scenario you should ever do to try to combat metagaming. Especially if you're a new DM, don't be afraid to have that conversation. People will have less fun if you are like, hey, here's an ancient dragon. Get fucked. And go way, way worse than just being like, hey, guys, can we not?
Yeah.
I will say I didn't take notes this time, but a bless to metagaming, in a sense, in combat, is that it can help the party remember mechanics. It could help you remember what your party's given to you. And outside of HP thresholds, I think it is a beneficial way to build the community of the table in working together as people that will then translate to them working together as players.
I totally 100% agree with that. I would say maybe, I don't know how to make this a bless, but this is what I thought of.
Okay.
For a lore keeper would be like, you get to have the fun. This is me being a nerd. You get to have the fun, like, experience of lore and building lore drops into your campaigns and your sessions that will help your party feel informed about things as they approach them. and potentially stop some of those roles or metagaming about monsters. That for me is like a fun thing and a fun puzzle. So I think that's a bless.
100% agree. I think that is such a fun way to do the game. I could go off on another tangent, but I don't think we have time. That's the key point that my Sunday game DM keeps trying to get back to. Creating weird monsters that you have to research to figure out how to.
Yeah.
A bane to metagaming is that it can make your party miss things, right? So if you're metagaming from that one perspective we touched on, where you're metagaming the DM style of storytelling itself, is you could potentially skip an entire story and really deflate what a DM has set up for you as a storyteller. And that could take away not only from the DM, but from the other players at the table and from the experience of playing the game and telling the story as a whole.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Another bane is just like, it will eventually piss people off at your table. Like, it doesn't take long for someone to be pissed that they're constantly breaking immersion at a game that most of us play to get away, like get into our imaginations and get out of our day to day. And when someone's just like, so Carol, how much HP do you have? Or you should shoot them with a poison arrow because that'll hurt more. And Carol is in her player thinking, what am I going to do? What's the next thing I'm going to do? And then instead of hearing her character name, she hears her name and she has to look up. It's just like not fun. It's not fun.
Especially in the circles that we run in playing D&D. It's definitely immersion breaking.
Yeah.
I mean, if your whole game style of playing D&D is playing D&D as a war game, as just the combat focused, combat centric hack and slash dungeon grinder, then maybe this isn't as applicable, what we're saying, to your game. And that's why we have the disclaimer at the start. This is us saying our opinions, and I'm going to stop appealing to you all who don't play the game like we do. Sorry, Adam, I had a mental break moment there.
You did. Are you okay?
I don't know. I feel like I just realized something.
I feel, I mean, if we can hold space, we can talk later about what you just learned. But at the same time, like, you are a mechanics DM, and even as a mechanics DM, you're saying we don't have to pander to anyone, but also, like, I think it means a lot for you to say, this is dumb and you should just have a conversation, like those kinds of things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everyone knows that I would rather play it like a novel or video game than a war crawler or a mechanics game.
Yep. But, if you're having fun playing with your players as a DM, creating an almost impossible situation because everyone's going to make the most optimal moves and everyone at the table, like, eats that up, like, really loves it, like, go ahead and let them know everything about the monster beforehand. Make them have that challenge. Like, take away that part of the challenge of the encounter. Add in your own. Spice it up.
Yeah.
But
as a DM piece, homebrew.
Yeah.
Or even just change small things. Change change the damage resistances.
Yeah. Especially if you're a DM and you want them to capture that part of the game back from extreme metagamers or people who've played the game for a long time and just know.
Actually, this troll's main stat is intelligence, and they're a wizard. And fools on you for thinking it was just a troll.
They don't have passive regeneration. They cast the spell regeneration. Okay?
Yeah. And you can stop them if you want. Anyway.
That's somewhere. What it boils down to is, in session 0, talk to your group about how much metagaming you do or don't want to engage in. If you're part of a group where that conversation never happened and session 0 never happened, just assume that you want to be in character. Talk to your DM like above table and make that conversation. Don't talk about table talk.
And you're a player or a brand new DM, but mostly for my players out there, if you're listening, if you're frustrated with something or someone at your table, of course, refer to whatever guide y'all have set to manage that kind of a thing. If you didn't set a guide, then talk to your GM.
Yeah. D&D shouldn't be an uncomfortable experience.
No.
And metagaming, I think it's just one of the ways that people can get uncomfortable or frustrated.
Mm-hmm.
It breaks immersion. And immersion's important. Yeah. Bane to metagaming. Immersion breaking. Bring it all back. That was what the whole tangent was about. It's just breaking
table immersion. Talk. Yeah. Anyway, thanks for listening.
Yeah.
It's been fun.
I appreciate you all.
We're on the socials.
Mm-hmm.
We have a Discord community.
We do.
And a Patreon.
Sometimes you'll catch us streaming in Discord random games. If you join.
Play some Bloodborne later. Like, subscribe, follow, rate us, whatever you can do on the app that you're on.
Yeah.
And thank you for listening. I don't know if both is good on this one.
It can be.
Both can be good.
Can be good. Well, we didn't really have two different versions of metagaming in this episode.
Nope.
But both styles of playing D&D are valid. And in that way, they're both good.
Okay. Both is good.
Wow. Just killing it with the outros.